In 2015, a man named Balenga Kalala had just attended the funeral of his beloved wife, Noela Rukundo, who was murdered back in her hometown after attending her stepmother's memorial. Now, once the funeral was over and all the guests were gone, Balenga noticed a vehicle pulling up. He thought to himself, who would be so disrespectful to come to my wife's funeral when it's over? As soon as the vehicle stopped, the back door opened and Balenga couldn't believe his eyes. It was his wife, Noela, who came back from the dead. And welcome back, my fellow true crime bandits. I am the Mysterious Black Bandit, and it is an honor to be your guide on this journey through the most perplexing and mystifying cases on YouTube. Thank you all so much for your love and support on this channel, and if you want to continue to help your boy out, you already know what to do. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on all those notifications so you don't miss out on none of these good videos. In today's video, we'll be talking about one of the most chilling yet inspiring stories I have heard in a while. So before we get started, go ahead and get your drink of choice, sit back, and join your boy as we dive into this baffling story. Noela Rukundo was born and raised in the Republic of Burundi of East Africa, and by the time she turned 24, she was married with 5 children. But after a few things didn't go as expected in the marriage, her spouse ended up divorcing her and leaving her to raise her kids on her own. In the year 2004, Noela left East Africa due to the political unrest and war that was going on, hoping she would be able to build a better life for herself and her children in Australia. Now, her sister had already been in Australia for a while and was pretty much established, so she allowed Noela and her children to come live with her for a while until she got on her feet. Soon after they arrived, she started working as a caregiver, which only earned her about $65 a day, but this was just enough to make ends meet and to provide for her children. Now, although she was working these long hours, she wasn't making enough money to live the life she wanted for her and her children, so she picked up extra shifts wherever she could to save as much money as possible. Aside from work, she started making new friends in the community after joining a local church and a women's group, which led to her getting better job opportunities. Through all the hard work to establish herself, she eventually was able to buy her own house in Melbourne, Australia for her and her kids. Now, in 2007, which was 3 years later, Noela and a few of her friends decided to go out to a party to celebrate her accomplishments, and this is where she met Balenga Kalala. Balenga was a forklift operator and refugee who had also arrived to Australia in 2004 to flee the rebel army in the Democratic Republic of Congo that had killed his wife and child when he was just 24 years old. Now, when he first saw Noela, he knew that he had to have her as his wife, but at the time, Noela wasn't interested in talking to anyone. Although she was doing good for herself, she still was trying to become more established before jumping into a relationship. Plus, they didn't even speak the same language. However, this didn't stop Balenga. Every other day, he would send her flowers and try to visit her as much as he could, and eventually, Noela decided to give him a chance since he was so persistent. Now, at first, it was kind of hard for them to make a connection due to the cultural and language barrier, but after getting to know each other, they soon fell in love and started dating. By 2009, just 2 years later, they decided to get married and move in with one another at the Kings Park suburbs in Melbourne. Now, for years, the two lived happily together and even had 3 children of their own, but over time, Balenga underwent a drastic change. He started to become suspicious and paranoid towards Noela, which led to him wanting to control every aspect of her life. He would accuse her of infidelity, claiming that she was having an affair with a mutual friend, but didn't have no evidence to back it up. He started to restrict her from seeing her friends and family without his permission, and when she did have to leave, she would have to tell him where she was going, her plans, who she was going to see, and when she was expected back home. Then, to make things worse, his behavior became violent and his temper grew short. He would lash out and start throwing things at her, and even threaten to kill her and the children if she ever left him. This behavior seemed to come out of nowhere, but many felt that his past involvement with criminal activities and substance abuse may have had something to do with it. But regardless of that, Noela was living a nightmare. Now, Balenga's suspicion on Noela cheating continued to grow over time, but in reality, it was just his conscience messing with him. He was actually the one cheating, and all the accusations he was making was just an attempt to deflect the attention away from his wrongdoings. Now, as time went on, he just couldn't accept the fact that Noela wasn't cheating, so what he did next will absolutely blow your mind. In January of 2005, Balenga notified Noela that her stepmother had passed away in Africa and told her that she needed to fly back to spend some time with the family and to pay her respects. So Noela flies back to her hometown while Balenga stays in Australia to watch the kids. Now, after attending the funeral, Noela returns back to her hotel to try to get some rest, but as she was lying there, her husband called to check and make sure she was okay. This is when she begins to vent about how emotionally drained and stressed she was with the funeral, so he told her she should go outside to get some fresh air. Not thinking anything of it, she decided to take his advice, and as soon as she left out the hotel doors, a man holding a gun approaches saying, "Don't scream or I'll shoot you." Scared out of her life, she stands there with her hands up, frozen, and this is when they forced her into the car where two other men were waiting. So as they started to drive off, they covered her face so she couldn't see where they were going, and after driving about 30 to 40 minutes, they made it to their destination. So once the car stopped, they forced her out of the car into a building and tied her up to a chair. Then one of the men asked her what she had done to make a man want to kill her. Confused as to what they meant, she responded, "Which man?" And this is when they called the man that wanted her dead, her very own beloved husband. The gunman then tell Balenga that they have her wife in custody, and the only words that came out of his mouth was, "Kill her." This man paid a group of men nearly $7,000 to have them kidnap his wife and kill her. Now, when Noela heard those words come out of her husband's mouth, she passed out. Now, after a few minutes had went by, the kidnappers woke her up and told her that they weren't going to kill her because they don't kill women or children, plus they knew her brother. Regardless of the fact, the gang leader still wanted to extort money from Balenga, so they informed him that if he wanted them to kill her, he would need to send more money, which made the total come out to almost $10,000. Now, once the money was paid, they held Noela for 2 days, then released her on the side of the road, leaving her with incriminating evidence that included a memory card and a Western Union money transfer receipt to prove that Belinda planned this hit. Now, right before leaving, they told Noela that she had 80 hours to leave the country and let her know that her husband was serious. They stated, "We can spare your life, but you may come across some other people that are not willing to do the same thing." Now, from the looks of it, Noela didn't know exactly who she was getting involved with before marrying. Apparently, when Balenga was back in Congo, he was involved with a lot of criminal activities, which led to him being locked up and also having these type of connections with African gangs. Now, as soon as the kidnappers left, Noela immediately called her pastor in Australia to ask for help, but told him not to tell anyone that she was still alive. Then she reached out to the Kenyan and Belgian embassy to help her return to Australia. By this time, Balenga, who believed that the murder plot had been executed, told friends and family that his wife had been killed in a tragic accident while she was in Africa and set plans for her memorial. On February 22nd, 2015, Noela finally arrived back to Melbourne, Australia, and went straight home to confront her husband. At around 7:30 p.m., Balenga was seen sobbing and escorting guests to their car following the memorial service he had hosted for his supposed dead wife. After all the guests had left, Noela emerged, and as soon as Balenga seen her get out that car, he noticed her right away. He put his head on his head in disbelief and said to himself, "Is it my eyes or is it a ghost?" This is when Noela said, "Surprise, I'm still alive." Then he slowly walks towards her while talking to himself, and as soon as he approached her, he reached out and touched her shoulder just to make sure she was real. And once that contact was made, he immediately screamed, saying, "I am so sorry for everything." No matter how hard he pleaded with her, she grabs her phone and calls the police. Now, initially, Balenga denied having anything to do with the murder plot, but in addition to the evidence given to Noela by the kidnappers, the police later wiretapped a phone conversation in which he confessed to the crime, stating he wanted to kill her because he was jealous and didn't want her to leave him. On December 11th, in a courthouse in Melbourne, Balenga pled guilty to incitement to murder and was sentenced to 9 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 6 years. In his closing statement, Balenga stated that sometimes the devil comes into someone to do something, but after they do it, they start thinking, "Why did I do this?" In the end, Noela eventually forgave him after taking into account his troubled childhood in war-torn Africa and his wife and child being brutally killed in his homeland. But she stated she still lives in fear, believing that even though he is locked up with those type of connections he had, she felt at any time he could hire another group of men that wouldn't mind killing her. And that will bring this incredible story to an end, my good people. This incident definitely captured the world's attention. Throughout this traumatic experience, Noela showed tremendous courage and resilience in the face of danger. Once again, stories like this should raise awareness about the devastating impact of domestic abuse. At the first sign of verbal or physical abuse, please either seek help or just leave the whole situation completely, because most of the time, it doesn't get better. All right, my beautiful people, I really hope you enjoyed this story. And if you don't mind, please hit that like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on any of these videos. Y'all make sure you have a wonderful day. And until next time, stay mysterious, my friends.